I am Nate Callahan, 36 years old, working as a mid-level civil servant at the town office in Ashland, Wisconsin. Our small town sits on the edge of Lake Superior, where icy winds sweep through snow-covered streets in winter, and the air, in summer, carries the scent of fish from the harbor mixed with the lake's salty breath. Ashland is a place where everyone knows each other's names, where the heartbeat of the community comes from its modest coffee shops, old churches, and corner stores. Life here is quiet, but not always kind. I grew up in a family where affection was scarce, where being noticed felt like a privilege I had to earn, but never fully received. My father, Frank, and my mother, June, owned Callahan's Corner, a convenience store on Main Street. Its faded red sign shelves of canned milk and snacks and the smell of grease behind the counter were the backdrop of my childhood. My younger siblings had a glow I never carried. Colby, 3 years younger, was my father's pride, athletic charming, quick to make people laugh. Brittany, 5 years younger, was my mother's princess with golden hair and wide blue eyes that drew admiration everywhere. And me, I was simply the eldest, forgotten, overlooked, the one given responsibility instead of love. By 7, I was changing diapers, mixing formula, and cleaning after dinner while my parents were busy with the store or distracted by television. Complaining meant being scolded by my father with the same line every time: "You're the eldest. Be responsible." My mother looked at me as if I were another chore. Birthdays were the hardest. Colby got parties with 3-tier chocolate cakes, Brittany twirled in new dresses while opening shiny gifts, and I quietly hoped someone might remember me. On my 12th birthday, my mother placed a stale cookie on the table with a distracted, "Oh, I forgot? It's your birthday today, isn't it?" My father's pat on the shoulder was his version of love. "You're a man now. You don't need gifts." That shallow cut left a scar I carried into adulthood. I excelled in school-winning essay contests and topping my class, but my father dismissed it. "Good grades don't pay bills," he said, as though every achievement were meaningless without money. When Colby broke the store's glass door with a basketball, my mother laughed it off. But when I spilled a crate of milk, my father's furious voice filled the store, branding me clumsy and useless. At 13, sticky with milk and shame, I promised myself I'd work harder. When I earned a scholarship later, I surrendered it to Colby at my father's insistence. "Your brother needs it more. You'll manage." So I stayed in Ashland, working at the town office for modest pay, carrying the bitterness of dreams I had buried. But in my 20s, light came into my life. Her name was Laya, an art teacher with soft curly hair and eyes like Lake Superior on its brightest days. We met at a summer fair where she sold paintings for her classroom. I bought a small canvas of wildflowers under a sunset and fell in love. We married when I was 26. Soon after our daughter Eliza was born, her mother's bright eyes and tender smile wrapped in a tiny body I held like the world's most fragile treasure. For a while, I thought happiness had finally chosen me. Then, tragedy struck. When Eliza was 3, Leah grew weak. The doctor said stage 4 pancreatic cancer, and within a year she was gone. I can still hear her final whisper as she held my hand. "Nate, you're an amazing father. Take care of Eliza. Don't let her feel as alone as you once did." My world collapsed that night, but I couldn't afford to fall. Eliza was only 4, clutching her teddy bear, asking where Mommy had gone. I held her and swallowed my grief, promising silently that I would not let her grow up feeling invisible. So I became both mother and father. I learned to braid her hair, cook her favorite chicken soup, and tell bedtime stories until she drifted off. My parents rarely helped, and when they did, their indifference stung. My siblings mocked me for struggling as a single father. Yet in Eliza's smile, I found strength. She was my reason to keep moving even when the loneliness was unbearable. At 5, Eliza sang her first folk song in our living room. Her voice, clear and soulful, carried memories of her mother. Tears filled my eyes as I realized this small girl was more than just my daughter. She was a miracle. Eliza's voice became the thread that stitched our broken lives together. Her music teacher, Miss Harper, once pulled me aside after class and said, "Nate, your daughter has something rare. She doesn't just sing, she makes people feel." I nodded, pride swelling inside me, but also fear. I had lived a life scarred by rejection, and I didn't want the world's cruelty to touch her tender heart. When Eliza was 9, Ashland held its annual town talent show under twinkling lights strung across the square. She begged me to let her sing her mother's favorite song, "Over the Rainbow." My stomach knotted with dread of small-town whispers, but her eyes shone with determination. That night, she walked on stage in a simple green dress Laia had sewn years earlier. Her tiny frame seemed to disappear under the spotlight, but the moment she sang, the whole square fell silent. Her voice floated across the crowd like a story carrying sunshine and grief, loss, and hope. I saw people crying openly, even the stern mayor rising to his feet when she finished. An audience member uploaded the video to YouTube, and overnight it went viral. The world suddenly knew my daughter as the Ashland girl with the angelic voice. From thousands of views, it soared to millions. Strangers across the country wrote messages about how her song had healed something in them. I was stunned. For the first time, our small town's name reached beyond Lake Superior, and at its center stood my daughter. Eliza wasn't swept away by the attention. Instead, her heart turned outward. One evening over spaghetti, she said, "Dad, I want to help kids who don't have parents. I want to sing for them." She was only 9, yet she spoke with a clarity I envied. With Miss Harper's help, I set up her first live stream from our living room, the walls decorated with her drawings and a blanket pinned up as a backdrop. She sang folk songs in her own little compositions, her voice trembling with sincerity. Donations trickled in, first a few dollars, then tens, then hundreds. By the end of that night, she had raised over $10,000. She hugged me, her small arms trembling with joy. "Dad, we did it." Her weekly live streams grew, drawing viewers from everywhere. She spoke about her mother, about Ashland, and about children who felt alone. Each time she reminded her audience to help if they could. Within a year, Eliza had raised and earned nearly $500,000 through donations, royalties, sponsorships, and competitions. She poured most of it into a charity fund for orphan children across Wisconsin. Watching her walk into orphanages with candy books and songs was like watching Laia live again through her. But I worried. She was still a child. Fame is sharp, and I didn't want it cutting into her innocence. I tried to protect her, but Eliza's heart was stronger than my fear. One December evening, she told me she wanted to give her grandparents a special Christmas gift. My parents' store, Callahan's Corner, was drowning in debt. She wanted to surprise them with a $50,000 check tucked inside a red-wrapped box with a handmade card that read, "Thank you, Grandma and Grandpa, for bringing my dad into the world. I hope this helps you." Her generosity broke me. My parents had never treated her with warmth, yet here she was offering them love. I didn't stop her. On Christmas Eve, we drove to my parents' house. Snow covered the streets, lanterns glowed from lampposts, and the smell of pine filled the air. Eliza clutched her gift, her smile radiant. "Dad, they'll be so surprised." Inside, the whole family gathered: my parents, Colby with his wife and kids, Brittany with her husband and son. The house rang with laughter, the children playing near the Christmas tree. Eliza ran to her grandparents, handing them the red box. My mother smiled thinly and placed it on the table with other gifts, turning quickly to ask Brittany about her recent trip. My father patted Eliza's head before sinking back into his football game. I saw the flicker of hurt in her eyes, and my heart twisted, but I kept silent. This was her moment, and I didn't want to shatter it. When dinner ended, the gift exchange began. Liam, Colby's son, got a gaming console. Emma, his daughter, unwrapped an electric bike. Noah, Brittany's boy, beamed over a Lego set. Laughter filled the room as my parents glowed with pride. Then came Eliza's turn. My father glanced around and asked June, "Where's Eliza's gift?" My mother laughed awkwardly. Oh, she doesn't need one. She's making money now. She can buy whatever she wants. The room fell silent. Then Colby's kids snickered. Yeah, Eliza's famous. She doesn't need presents, Liam mocked. Emma added cruelly, Grandma and Grandpa don't like show-offs. My blood boiled, but Eliza squeezed my hand and whispered, It's okay, Dad. I tried to stay calm until Emma suddenly splashed orange juice all over Eliza's green dress. Grandma and Grandpa say you're just showing off for likes, she sneered. The room froze. Eliza trembled but didn't cry. Instead, she lifted her cup and splashed water back at Emma. Don't talk about me like that, she said, her voice quivering but firm. The silence shattered into chaos. My father roared, calling her disrespectful. My mother accused her of arrogance. My siblings watched coldly as Eliza stood small and shaken, her mother's dress stained. I could take no more. I pulled her behind me, walked to the table, and opened the red box. Holding up the $50,000 check, I shouted, This is who Eliza is. She wanted to save your store to thank you for giving me life, but none of you deserve it. And in front of them all, I tore the check into pieces. The room gasped as the fragments fell like snow across the table. The silence that followed was heavier than the winter snow outside. My father's jaw tightened, my mother clutched her chest, and Colby and Brittany sat frozen in disbelief. I felt every eye on me, but I no longer cared. I took Eliza's trembling hand, and together we walked out, leaving behind stunned stares and a house that had never felt like home. Outside, the Ashland wind cut sharp against our faces. Eliza's dress clung damp with orange juice, her eyes glistening, but she whispered, Dad, I'm sorry. I knelt down, pulling her into my arms. No, sweetheart. I'm the one who's sorry. You deserved better. We drove away in silence, the Christmas lights of town twinkling faintly through my windshield. I wanted to erase the memory of that night for her to replace it with something bright. So instead of heading home, I steered us toward the winter fair at the town center. The square glowed with lanterns, candy stalls, and the Ferris wheel spinning slowly above the crowd. Eliza's eyes lit up as if nothing had happened. Can we get cotton candy? She asked softly. I bought one pink for her, one blue for me, and we sat on a bench eating in the cold night air. Families laughed around us, children shouted by the ice rink, and a group of teenagers sang carols near the tree. Eliza leaned her head on my shoulder. Christmas is still fun, right, Dad? I ruffled her hair and forced a smile. As long as we have each other, Christmas will always be fun. Deep down, though, the hollowness in my chest ached. I wanted her to know she was enough, that no rejection could dim her light. When the night wound down, I led her back to the car and opened the trunk. I had hidden a small box there weeks earlier, wrapped in silver paper with a red ribbon. This is your real Christmas gift, I said. She unwrapped it carefully, and inside lay a silver microphone engraved with the words, Eliza, my light. Her lips trembled and she threw her arms around me. I love you, Dad. I don't need anything else, just you. I hugged her back, my tears soaking into her hair. That night, as she softly sang into her new microphone by the fair's Christmas tree, passers-by stopped and smiled. In their faces, I saw the recognition I had once begged for from my parents. I knew then that the only approval we needed was each other's. The days after Christmas were difficult. Gossip spread quickly through Ashland, and whispers about the fight at my parents' house followed me everywhere. The supermarket cashier gave me a pitying look. The delivery man asked bluntly if it was true. I stopped explaining. I was tired of defending myself. Eliza, however, hid her pain better than I did. Each morning she sat at the kitchen table with hot milk, sketching drawings of us by Lake Superior or of her mother's smiling face. She avoided mentioning her grandparents, quietly tucking the unopened Christmas letter she had written for them into a drawer. I saw the hurt in her silence, but I let her keep it where she wanted, close enough to remember, far enough not to bleed. I decided to focus on what truly mattered, her dreams. Her voice wasn't just a gift, it was her way of healing. With the money she had raised, I set up a small company to manage her growing opportunities, naming it Light in the Dark, after the song she had written about her mother. I knew nothing about management, but I learned fast. I read contracts, carefully consulted with a lawyer in Milwaukee, and brought in an accountant friend to handle the finances. Every choice I made had one purpose: to protect her from the kind of exploitation I had grown up with. Eliza continued to write songs, her notebook filling with lyrics that seemed too wise for her years. One day she showed me a piece called "Broken Pieces." The melody was haunting, and the lyrics spoke of trying to mend a shattered family only to realize that love between two hearts was enough. When she sang it for me in our living room, I could barely breathe. "This is about us, Dad," she said softly. I hugged her, my tears soaking into her hair again. She was right, it was about us and about every scar that had led us here. Her charity work grew alongside her music. She performed at a fundraising event in Madison, where her song "Light in the Dark" brought hundreds of people to tears. Strangers approached me saying how lucky I was to have a daughter like her. And they were right. Eliza was more than lucky, she was a blessing. But our past wasn't done haunting us. One morning my phone rang. It was my mother. Her voice wavered as she said, "Nate, I'm sorry about Christmas. We didn't mean for it to go so far. Eliza's a good girl, just don't embarrass the family online." Bitterness rose in my chest. "Mom," I said coldly, "Eliza and I don't need to do anything to embarrass this family. You've done that yourselves." I hung up, my heart pounding. Days later, Colby texted me asking if Eliza could transfer some money to help save the store. Rage bubbled up. After everything they had said, after humiliating her, how could they still dare ask? I blocked his number without replying. I had spent my whole life paying for a place in their family. I was done. Months passed quietly in Ashland, though whispers about that Christmas still lingered. I buried myself in learning how to protect Eliza's growing career. She kept writing songs, filling the house with melodies that carried both the ache of loss and the warmth of hope. Our little company, Light in the Dark, slowly took shape. I stayed up late reviewing contracts, negotiating with small sponsors, and making sure no one could exploit her talent. Eliza continued live streaming weekly, her voice now reaching far beyond Wisconsin. But at home, she was still just a 10-year-old girl who loved cotton candy and sketching sunsets. Then, one spring afternoon, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find my parents standing there. My father looked older, his once commanding posture bent, his hair streaked with gray. My mother clutched her purse with trembling hands, her eyes tired and uneasy. We hadn't spoken since the night I tore up Eliza's gift. For a moment, I almost closed the door, but instead, I stepped aside and let them in. They sat stiffly on the couch, Eliza's drawings filling the walls around them. My father cleared his throat, his voice low. "Nate, we know Christmas was our fault. We weren't fair to you or Eliza, but the store's in trouble, big trouble." My mother leaned forward, tears brimming. "We mortgaged the house, but it's not enough. If we don't get money, Callahan's Corner will close. It's our life's work." "Please, Nate." I stared at them, my chest tightening. Memories of my childhood flooded back, being scolded in that store, ignored at birthdays, dismissed when I succeeded. I thought of Eliza handing them her gift with so much love, only to be humiliated. The bitterness rose like bile. "What do you want from me?" I asked flatly. My mother hesitated, then whispered, "We heard Eliza's earning from her singing. If you could help just a little." My father added quickly, "She's famous now, Nate. It wouldn't be hard. Just enough to pay the bank." Their words sliced through me. Even now they didn't see me. They saw Eliza, their granddaughter, as a source of money. My voice shook with restrained anger. "Eliza already tried to help. She spent weeks preparing a gift for you and you threw it aside. She has nothing left to give, and neither do I." My mother burst into tears. "Nate, how can you say that we're family?" My father slammed his hand on the table. "That store is this family's legacy. Don't hoard her money out of pride." I stood abruptly, my hands trembling. Legacy. That store is where I was told I was worthless, where my daughter was mocked and humiliated. You had your chance. We've paid enough. Get out. He opened the door. My mother sobbed harder. My father glared at me with disappointment, but I didn't waver. They walked out and the door shut behind them with finality. I leaned against it, my heart pounding. At the stairs, Eliza stood silently, her eyes wide. "Dad, were Grandma and Grandpa here?" she asked softly. I pulled her into a hug. They were sweetheart. But don't worry, I handled it. I didn't tell her they'd come begging for money. She didn't need to carry that burden. 3 months later, the gossip reached us. Callahan's Corner had closed. The bank had taken the house on Maple Street, and my parents had moved into a small apartment near Milwaukee. Part of me felt a pang of sorrow. It was the place I had grown up, even if it was painful. But mostly I felt relief. That weight was no longer mine to carry. Eliza has always showed more compassion than I did. "Dad, if Grandma and Grandpa need help, should we do something?" she asked one evening as we walked by Lake Superior. I squeezed her hand gently. Sometimes helping means letting people face themselves. We've already done enough. She nodded, though I could see the sadness lingering in her eyes. She still loved them, even when they didn't deserve it. Our lives found a new rhythm. Eliza shifted to online schooling to have more time for her music and charity work. We filled our evenings with laughter, hot chocolate, and her songs echoing through our little house. I told her stories about Laya, how she painted wildflower fields, how she laughed when the wind played with her hair. I wanted Eliza to grow up with those memories, to know her mother's spirit lived in her. And as the months passed, I realized something. I was no longer the forgotten eldest son of the Callahans. I was Eliza's father, her protector, her manager, and her biggest fan. Together we were building a life full of love, just the two of us. The winter after Callahan's Corner closed felt different. Ashland still lay under heavy snow lake. Superior still roared against the shore, but inside our little home there was light. Eliza wrote songs daily, filling her notebooks with melodies that captured both our struggles and our hope. Our evenings were warm with laughter-hot soup and her voice echoing through the rooms. For the first time, I felt peace settling into our lives. Then, one crisp morning, an email arrived that changed everything. It was from a cultural organization in Washington, D.C., inviting Eliza to perform at the National Tree Lighting Ceremony, a nationally televised Christmas event. I read the message 3 times, my hand shaking. Eliza, only 10 years old, chosen to sing before millions. Eliza! I called, my voice trembling. She ran in her ponytail, bouncing. "What is it, Dad?" I turned the laptop toward her. She skimmed the email and squealed, leaping into my arms. "Dad, for real. I get to sing in Washington, D.C. I laughed through tears. Her eyes sparkled brighter than the snow outside, and though pride swelled in my chest, worry shadowed it. This stage was bigger than anything we had ever faced. We prepared with everything we had. Eliza chose to perform Light in the Dark, the song she had written for her mother. I want people to hear this when she said seriously. I want them to know there's always light somewhere. I contacted the Milwaukee record label to re-record it with a professional orchestra, hired a local stylist to create a dress the color of Lake Superior, with embroidery like wildflowers, and watched her practice every night in front of the living room mirror, holding the silver microphone I had given her. Each note carried our story, each lyric a piece of our lives. Miss Harper visited to help coach her, shaking her head in wonder. "Nate, I've never seen a child like her. She doesn't just sing, she tells the truth." The day of departure, we boarded a small plane out of Duluth. It was Eliza's first flight, and she pressed her face to the window, laughing at the cotton candy clouds. My heart was pounding. Fame and opportunity were doors that could swallow innocence whole. I kept reminding myself, she is my daughter before she is a singer. When we arrived in Washington, the city glowed with Christmas spirit. The massive tree in front of the White House shone with thousands of lights, and the streets thrummed with families and tourists. Eliza was whisked into a press conference, and I watched from the corner as she spoke with a confidence that startled me. A CNN reporter asked Eliza, "You're only 10, but you've raised hundreds of thousands for orphaned kids. What drives you?" She smiled and answered simply, "When you lose someone important, you learn to cherish what's left. I want kids like me to know they're not alone." Her words rippled across social media within hours. Millions shared clips of her speaking. The 10-year-old with a heart of gold, one headline called her. The night of the performance, I stood below the stage among thousands. Eliza walked out in her blue dress, the silver microphone glinting in her hands. She looked small, but when the spotlight found her, she smiled, and my heart stopped. Her voice rang out clear and strong, filling the air like sunlight piercing the cold. She sang Light in the Dark, her song for Laya, and the crowd went silent, listening as if time itself had paused. Tears streamed down faces around me. When she finished, the square erupted with applause, so thunderous it felt like the world itself was cheering. I shouted her name until my throat ached, my hands stinging from clapping. Afterward, she was invited onto a live television interview. Sitting under bright studio lights, she looked both radiant and small, but her voice was steady. The host asked Eliza, "What message do you want to share with everyone watching tonight?" She paused, then said, "I hope kids like me don't have to use money to buy love. Real love is what you give, and it always finds its way back." Her words fell like a stone into a still lake, sending ripples across the nation. Newspapers, television channels, and millions online repeated them. The Washington Post called her the child teaching America about love. And as I watched from backstage, I realized Eliza wasn't just my light anymore. She had become a light for the world. But light attracts shadows, too. Offers flooded in contracts from record labels, sponsorships from major companies, invitations to travel constantly. Some wanted her on tour, others wanted to exploit her image. I rejected anything that threatened to rob her of childhood. "Eliza is my daughter first," I told them firmly. "She will sing when she chooses." At home, she remained grounded, still writing in her notebook, still sketching pictures of her mother. One evening she looked at me and said softly, "Dad, I think Mom's watching. She'd be proud, right?" Tears blurred my vision. She's always proud, sweetheart. And so am I. Fame followed us home like a shadow. In Ashland, people who once ignored me now nodded politely or whispered as we passed. Some asked for Eliza's autograph at the grocery store. Others wanted photos by Lake Superior, where she had filmed a small music video. I kept my head down, learning to balance pride with caution. Our home remained our refuge, filled with drawings, laughter, and Eliza's songs echoing through every corner. But old wounds don't heal easily. A few weeks after Washington, my phone rang. It was my mother. Her voice was weak, stripped of the sharpness it once carried. "Nate, I'm sorry about Christmas Eve. We didn't mean for things to go that far. Eliza is a wonderful girl. Just please don't let this family's mistakes become public. Don't embarrass us." Her words made me laugh bitterly. "Mom, Eliza and I don't need to do anything to embarrass this family. You've done that yourselves." I hung up before she could respond, my chest heavy with the finality of it. Then Colby reached out. A text lit my phone one morning. "If Eliza still cares about Grandma and Grandpa, have her send some money to save the store. You know how hard things are." I clenched the phone until my knuckles ached. After everything, the humiliation, the cruelty, they still saw us as a bank account. I typed one short reply. "I've already paid enough for a family that never wanted me." Then I blocked his number. I thought that would be the end, but 3 months later, they showed up at my door again. My father's shoulders were stooped, his once booming voice now hoarse. My mother's eyes were red, her hands wringing the strap of her purse. "Nate," she whispered, "please. The bank's taken everything. We'll lose the store, the house. You're our only hope." I let them in, though every part of me screamed not to. We sat in the living room surrounded by Eliza's artwork, her sketches of wildflower fields and lakeside sunsets hanging proudly on the walls. My father spoke first. "That store is our legacy. It's part of who you are. If Eliza could help just this once, we'd survive." I felt something inside me snap. Legacy. I remembered nights spent cleaning shelves, the sting of my father's words when I made mistakes, the way they dismissed Eliza's love on Christmas Eve. "No," I said firmly. "That store was your legacy, not mine. Eliza already tried to save you. She gave you her heart and you threw it away. There's nothing left to give." My mother began to sob. My father's face turned red, his glare filled with the same disappointment I'd seen all my life. "You're throwing away family," he spat. "You'll regret this." I opened the door and pointed outside. "No, I'm protecting my family." They left slowly, my mother crying softly, my father's eyes burning with anger. I stood there for a long time after the door shut, my heart thudding like a drum. Eliza had been upstairs humming a new song, but she appeared on the stairs as I turned back. "Dad," she asked quietly, "were Grandma and Grandpa here?" I nodded and pulled her close. "They were, sweetheart, but don't worry. It's over. I didn't tell her they'd come begging again. I refused to let her feel responsible for their burdens." A few months later, the news spread Callahan's Corner had closed permanently. The bank had foreclosed on their house, and my parents had moved into a small apartment outside Milwaukee. Neighbors gossiped about their fall, but I felt only a strange mix of sorrow and relief. That building had been both the cradle of my childhood and the forge of my scars. Its end felt like a door finally closing. Eliza has always carried more kindness than I could. "Dad, do you think Grandma and Grandpa are okay?" she asked one evening while we walked by the lake. The water shimmered red under the sunset. I squeezed her hand gently. "I don't know, sweetheart. But sometimes helping means letting people face the truth themselves. You and I have already done enough." She nodded, though I saw the sadness flicker in her eyes. She still carried love for them, even when they hadn't earned it. Life moved forward. Eliza turned 12, her voice deeper, richer, more powerful than before. Our company, Light in the Dark, grew into something bigger than I had imagined, connecting young artists with charities. Eliza didn't just sing for herself, she inspired others. From orphaned children in Wisconsin to teenagers across America, she showed them that even the smallest voice could make a difference. And me, I learned to live as more than a forgotten son. I became a father, a manager, a storyteller, and most of all the anchor for the little girl who had become my light. Time passed and our little house in Ashland became more than shelter. It became a home filled with light. Eliza's drawings covered the walls, fields of wildflowers, sunsets over Lake Superior, and portraits of her mother painted from memory and love. In the corner stood a small shelf of keepsakes, each one a piece of our story, the silver microphone engraved, "Eliza, my light," the Christmas card she had once written for her grandparents, never opened, and a family photo of Laya smiling in the summer sun. Each object carried both ache and warmth, reminders of what we had lost, but also what we had built. Eliza kept writing songs, each one more personal than the last. One evening she sang a new piece called "Home in My Heart." Her voice carried through the room, and as I listened, I realized the lyrics told our story. Two people, one big, one small, walking hand in hand, finding home, not in four walls, but in each other. When she finished, her eyes sparkled as she whispered, "This one is about us, Dad." My throat tightened as I pulled her into a hug. Sweetheart, I couldn't be prouder. Light in the Dark. The small company I had once started just to protect her grew beyond us. It became a platform for young artists who wanted to use their talents to make a difference. Eliza's example inspired countless others to sing, write, and create for causes larger than themselves. Every day, I learned more about managing her career, negotiating with sponsors, and rejecting unfair contracts. Some nights, exhaustion nearly broke me, But every time I saw her smile or heard her voice rise in song, I knew it was worth every sacrifice. Her fame wasn't without pressure. There were constant offers, interviews, and invitations. Sometimes news articles twisted her words, or strangers whispered cruel things online. But we learned to set boundaries. Eliza performed only when she truly wanted to, and I was always there by her side, whether in a crowded concert hall or at our own kitchen table. I made sure she still had time to be a child, skating on the town rink, eating cotton candy at fairs, and watching cartoons together on the couch. The Callahan family faded into the background of our lives. After their second visit, I never heard from my parents again. Their store was gone, their house sold, their pride crumbled. Colby and Brittany continued flaunting their lives online, but neither reached out. I no longer expected them to. Eliza, however, never hardened her heart. Sometimes she asked softly, "Dad, do you think Grandma and Grandpa are happy?" And I would squeeze her hand and say, "I don't know, sweetheart. But what matters most is that we are." Looking back, I realized something I had spent my whole life chasing. As a boy, I thought love was something to fight for, to prove myself worthy of. But Eliza showed me otherwise. Real love doesn't demand proof. It's not bought with money or sacrifice. Real love is given freely. And when you find someone who cherishes it, you have a family, even if it's just two people standing against the world. One snowy night by the fireplace, I told her, "Sweetheart, I can't promise you the world, but I promise I'll always be here cheering you on, no matter how far you go." Eliza smiled, hugging me tightly. "I don't need the world, Dad. I just need you." And in that moment, I knew. Despite every wound, every scar, every rejection from the family that never saw me, I had found something greater. A new family. A love that didn't come with conditions. A home not made of wood and walls, but of songs, drawings, and the bond between father and daughter. If I could send a message to anyone who has ever felt overlooked or unwanted, it would be this: you don't have to earn love by proving your worth. Sometimes, family isn't defined by blood, but by the people who hold your hand through the darkest nights, who see you as light, even when you can't see it in yourself. Find those people, and when you do, hold them tight. Because in the end, it isn't legacy, money, or approval that defines your life. It's love. And I finally learned that the love I had searched for all my life was right here, in the voice of a little girl who sang not just for herself, but for the world. If you found this story meaningful, please like this video, share it with someone who might need it, subscribe for more heartfelt stories, and leave a comment about what touched you most. Your voice matters here.